So one of the kind of major concerns here comes from um, an argument that I'm going to kind of adapt from John Stuart Mill and his essay on liberty. So we might worry that if we hold people to account for their beliefs, so if we think that people need to bear responsibility for things that they believe, this could open the door to censorship. So this is this kind of slippery slope argument that we're going to talk about here. So the worry might be that if we accept that people's beliefs are things that are legitimate targets of criticism and of potential intervention from others, then this could open the door to some political outcomes that we don't really like. So maybe we can accept that people's actions maybe are things which we can hold them responsible for, but beliefs seem to be slightly different in kind. It seems to be more kind of more of an overreach, or at least more of a reach to assess somebody's beliefs, and it suggests that they need to change them. The thing about Mill as this kind of originator of this style of argument, we're going to give some background here. So Mill was a political liberal, so he was, both a philosophical defender of liberalism, but also a member of the Liberal Party in politics in the UK. And as a result of this kind of philosophical commitment, he accepts a strong role for personal autonomy. So this is the idea that, all things being equal, and as much as possible, people should be left alone to kind of decide what's good for them and figure out their own lives. So Mill is most famous for advocating this principle called the harm principle. This is the idea that so long as they aren't harming anybody, people should be able to do as they like. And this is a principle that Mill originally comes up with regards to actions, but it seems like pretty reasonable to assume that he would extend this to beliefs as well. So people shouldn't be interfered with unless they are harming someone else. So we might think that one way in which we could have beliefs which do violate the harm principle is if we really accept some quite strong argument that we of the kind that we saw in the third lecture as to where beliefs can wrong people. But it seems like that's going to be a pretty strong claim to make. So unless we buy into that idea that beliefs can wrong people and indeed go so far as to harm them, which is going to be a pretty strong claim to make, especially if you ascribe to subscribe to certain views about harm that is kind of essentially physical, which Mill seems to. It's going to be quite a hard claim to make. In which case, if we're followers of Mill, we're going to think that people's beliefs are going to be a domain where they should really be left alone to kind of believe whatever they want to believe themselves, so long as they aren't hurting anybody. Another thing that's kind of concerning to Mill here is this idea of why it's so important to let people have a diversity of beliefs and let people kind of live their lives and believe the things that they want to believe when in a way that's not kind of pressured onto them by others. So Mill's pretty optimistic about what he terms the marketplace of ideas. And this is the kind of thought that if we have everybody's allowed to kind of approach problems independently, form their own beliefs, and then share them in a kind of free association, by encouraging people to explore all kinds of beliefs, it opens the door to people being able to kind of make up their minds for what works best for them. So if we're assuming that people are kind of essentially rational and able to look out for themselves, then it seems like pretty compelling that people ought to be able to try and work out for themselves what the kind of best beliefs for them to hold are, rather than being told by some kind of central authority. And Mill's particularly concerned about intellectual progress as a kind of social good. So when we think about how intellectual progress occurs, Mill argues that a lot of it comes from people challenging received dogma. So if people, if people don't have the option to think differently and form different kinds of beliefs, then this is going to be something that could potentially get in the way of intellectual progress, which is good for everybody.